Hey buddy, how's it going? It's good to hear from you, man.
Hey man, I'm starting that Death Guard army. Yeah, it's probably gonna need a Demon Prince. Is that something you'd be up for?
Yeah, no, that's a super cool mini. Yeah, I'm really into it. I can do that.
Yeah, see, that's the issue. I'm not a fan of the original one, and I was hoping for something converted, but green stuff kind of scares me, and not in the good Nurgly way, but just in general. I was hoping to, slap together maybe a Plague Drone and an original.
Um, yeah, sure, yeah, no problem, no problem. I can do that. Look, leave it with me. I got you. I'll do some research. We'll get it sorted.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. See ya.
Yeah, okay, bye, mate. See ya. Fuck. So yes, I have once again managed to talk myself into a hole, accepting a commission that is clearly going to involve a bunch of sculpting. And the thing is, sculpting has never been something that I can't do or don't know how to do. It's just always been something that scares the shit out of me. I always find myself shying away from attempting conversions that I know are going to involve sculpting because it's just a skill that I never feel I'm good enough at it no matter how much I practice. And as a result of that, I kind of stopped practicing at some point. But Victor, the guy in the video at the start there, he's a really good friend of mine. I really wanted to give him something special, and he's been a loyal customer for a long time now. And I just thought to myself, do you know what? I'm going to push myself for this one. I'm going to do something that I wouldn't normally do, because at the end of the day, I know I can do it, and that guy deserves something really cool that he can be proud of. So let's get into how I converted Victor's Demon Prince. Okay, so as we said in that intro there, that little cheesy pretend phone call, it's going to be the standard Demon Prince model that we're basing this off of, not the Demon Prince of Nurgle miniature. And that's going to mean I'm going to have to do a whole bunch of converting, sculpting, etc, etc. Victor and I had already come up with the idea between us that we wanted to use a Nurgle Plague Drone as part of this. So we kind of already knew what kits we were going to be working with, and that allowed me to start to build up some ideas. So I had a rough idea in my head of how I wanted to do this, but nothing too set in stone. There was just a couple of preliminary things I'd decided. So before I can actually get started doing any work, the first thing I'm going to have to do is get all of my tools, putties, glues, and the miniatures themselves all available and on the table. So let's do that first of all. Right, so the first step here is going to be doing just the basic assembly of the bits that we know aren't going to change. The parts of the kit that we know we're going to use kind of as is, and the things that sort of form the skeleton upon which we're going to do the rest of our converting. You could, of course, plan this out on paper first, but I visualise better in 3D. So for me personally, I prefer to kind of start building the miniature and then look at where I want to go with sculpting and that kind of thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut out all of the main bits, the legs and the torso and that kind of thing. And then I'm going to get them all nicely cleaned up and prepared. I'm going to get them glued together so that we're good to go. That's going to get me pretty much ready with a framework upon which to do all of my other stuff. Okay, so what I want to start doing now is just like a dry fit of the main parts from the Plague Drone sprue that I'm going to be bringing in. So this is the parts from that sprue that I knew I was definitely using. Again, we've not started sort of going into the freestyling section yet. Mainly we're talking about the wings here. So my secret weapon for doing this is blue tack. Blue tack's going to allow these things to stick enough that you can kind of position them, because the putty will sort of hold things in place where you want them. But it's in no way any kind of permanent bond. It's not going to leave any residue behind. You can work straight on top of it, that kind of thing. So it's really, really helpful to be able to do all of that. Once I've got all those pieces in place with that blue tack, I've then got a pretty good idea of how I want things to look, and I can start to think about how I'm going to permanently integrate those into the sculpts now. Right, so now that I've got that dry fit done and I know roughly what's going to go where from that Plague Drone sprue, I now need to get them rough glued into place. And this is the way that I prefer to do things, because once something's rough glued into place, you can sort of sculpt around it and make things look more fluid, more natural. So what I'm going to do is just kind of carve away at these pieces a little bit to make them approximately fit to the miniature. And then once I've got them so that they can at least be kind of glued on, then I can get them in place and start to work around them. So what I'll now do is with those pieces that I've put into place now, I'll start to sculpt around them with some white fine milliput. The reason I use white fine milliput is because I tend to find green stuff a bit too firm for doing the kind of sculpting where I'm sort of blending back into the original form of the miniature. Green stuff's quite good for like fur texture, quite kind of rigid shape, stuff like that. But whenever I use it to do stuff that I want to really sort of smooth back into things, I find that it sort of requires too much force to push around, and I tend to make mistakes with it too easily. So I'll stick to the white fine milliput because that's what works better for me. It's important here to realise that you're going to want to be working a section at a time so that you don't get in your own way. If you're sculpting near wet putty, obviously you might get a thumbprint on it or something like that. You're going to then have to blend that back out. You're going to create a lot of pain in the arse for yourself. So sort of pick sections and work on them in such an order that while you're working on one section, you can stay away from the other. If you run out of sections that you can work on, then just wait until stuff's hardened a little bit and then start to work on the next part. For the actual sculpting itself, I use a combination of a hard metal sculpting tool, which I think I picked up from Amazon with some green stuff, and a color shaper, which is something that you can get from any art shop, to be honest. They're normally used just for sort of pushing thick paint around on canvases, but they do a really good job of doing smooth sculpting as well. One really important thing here is that you're gonna want to keep your tool wet when you're trying to move putty around on the surface of the miniature. If your tool is dry, the putty will stick to it and pull away from the miniature. If the miniature is dry, which is what the putty is sat on, and the tool is wet, the putty is going to have no purchase to the tool, which means that you're going to be able to freely sculpt it around, and it's just going to keep sticking to the miniature, not to your color shaper or your metal spatula or whatever. Okay, so now I've got to wait for those small wings to dry before I can work on the wings above them. This is what I was saying about not getting in the way of yourself. So because I can't really work on the back of the miniature anymore, what I'm now going to do is flip him over, and on the front I wanted to kind of sculpt like a big bloated distended belly and kind of make his chest look less ripped and that kind of thing. So I'm going to start working away on that, again just with white fine milliput, and this is going to get me sort of more of that, you know, chubby, bloated, sort of not very healthy, Nurgle-y kind of vibe going to the piece, instead of him looking all ripped and shredded like a corn demon or something. Now, something I'd previously done before actually starting work on the rest of this is sculpted a bunch of tiny little balls out of green stuff of varying sizes. Some of them probably about sort of 3mm diameter, going all the way down to about sort of maybe even 0.5 millimeter of diameter. And then what I did was, once they'd started to go hard, I cut them all in half, and this gives me a big stockpile of stuff that I can use for boils, pustules, warts, spots, and even his nipples actually. So what I'm going to do is, because I've now got some soft milliput in these areas, I'm going to press some of them into the surface of the soft milliput. There will be sort of coming back and looking at these again later in a slightly different context, but these were just the sort of first run of them that I wanted to start fixing to the piece. I'm also going to take a wet cocktail stick here, and I'm just going to sort of twizzle it into the surface here and there, just to make some sort of potholes here and there in his skin, kind of make him look a bit, you know, more gross and unhealthy. Right, so now that I've kind of done the front section there and I've got the rest of the wings all sculpted back in and all that kind of thing, I can now start finishing off my basic assembly, so start adding the rest of the pieces of the miniature that I couldn't add previously because they'd have got in the way of my sculpting. So these are parts that are either going to be minimally modified or not modified at all, but I just didn't want them on initially while I was sculpting because I didn't want them to get in my way and cause me dramas when I'm, you know, trying to sort of get in there and do fighting sculpting. What I'm also going to do here is grab some liquid green stuff, something that actually can be a little unpopular, I've found, with some hobbyists, but I really like it, and I'm just going to use this to do some basic gap filling. So this is just, you know, the same kind of gap filling that you would do normally, but it can also kind of blend back some of that sculpting into the miniature and stuff like that, so it's kind of handy here. Then, as I said, we are going to revisit those pustules and boils. We're going to start gluing some of those to the surface of the miniature now, and then we'll use liquid green stuff to just carefully blend them back into the miniature. Now, what I did here was I just took a little bead of super glue and then a cocktail stick and spread an even coating of that super glue over the layer that I wanted to work on. This allowed me to then just wet a fresh cocktail stick, use it to pick up those hemispheres and just place them onto the glue, and they adhered nicely. Then I set all that up with some super glue activator and just painted over it carefully with that liquid green stuff to blend back a little bit. Okay, so that was a bunch of work. I have not done a kit bash or a conversion or any kind of sculpting on that level for a very, very long time, and so it was a big leap of faith for me to be, you know, able to sort of get into that and do something with it. Now, I haven't at this point started the painting on it. That's something that's going to be coming soon. I probably won't actually do a video on the painting of it because I have another Demon Prince commission coming up as well, and so if one of them's got to be a painting video, it probably makes sense for the converted one to be a conversion video and then the non-converted one to be a painting video. So make sure you're following me on social media if you want to see the completed pictures of this, because that's probably where it's going to go up once it's got some paint on it. Now, the project was ambitious and I did try really, really hard on it. I've got some nice photos now that I want to show you, so I'm going to shut up for a second and you can take a look around this conversion and just tell me what you think of it. So I really, really hope that you liked that. As I have said a couple of times throughout this video, it was super hard work for me and I did put a ton of effort into it, but I'm really, really proud that I pushed myself and that I got good results, kind of just based on how much I really cared about the project. You know, when you really give a fuck about a project, you will just try that little bit harder to just make sure that it's a true expression of what you're trying to do, and that is a lovely, fun, fulfilling, creative process to go through. So I hope it was fun for you to watch me going through it, even if a few times I was a little bit scared. We got there in the end and we got a good looking miniature that I can't wait to get painted. So folks, if you did like this video, make sure you click that like button to tell me that you liked it, and you can also subscribe to the channel and enable notifications, and then YouTube will very kindly keep you up to date on when I'm posting videos. If you want to support the creation of this content and allow me to continue to take this as my full-time job, I have a Patreon where you can do that from as little as $1 American a month. That's what, 60-70p if you're in the UK. So if you fancy checking that out, then there's going to be a link to that in the description of the video as well as all my social media and the usual stuff that I put in there, so check all of that out down below. I think it's probably time for me to stop rambling on and get out of here now, so thank you so much for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'll see you in the next one, everybody. Take care.